Hey folks, welcome. We've got Matthew Lee here, business partner and founder of Volition Properties, today to talk with us. We're going to focus on reverse mortgages. And before you run away, because you think we've said a bad word, there are actually very good use cases for reverse mortgages for both, personal use as well as investors. And we want to dive into it today, and take out, I think, some of the stigma behind reverse mortgages. If you're new, which, maybe you are, but you've probably seen our faces before, we're Volition Properties. We have a new tagline. So let me read it out because I'm not, smooth with it yet. But Volition Properties, basically, we help you make smarter real estate moves. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, you can do it with confidence with Volition Properties. We offer tailored advice, education, and community grounded in strategy and built on trust. That is us. Nice, isn't it?
Wow.
You probably haven't heard it yet.
No, I haven't. I liked our old one, but I also came up with our old one. So
Yeah, the confirmation bias they call it, right? Cool. So let's dive into reverse mortgages. First, let's do a quick what the heck is a reverse mortgage? So maybe you can run us through that, and then we'll dive into why people should even be thinking about them and where it may make sense for investors.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, reverse mortgages, there's a lot of stigma around them, and it is a bad word in a lot of people's minds. And that's because there was a lot of the way that they were rolled out, especially how they were used in the States, it was very predatory. But here in Canada, actually, there's a lot of benefit to them when used properly. Now, I don't think necessarily that you should go use a reverse mortgage and buy a yacht or anything like that, but done properly, there is a lot of benefit. So let's get into it. So what is reverse mortgage? A reverse mortgage is really, really beneficial for an older population. And so if you are 55, 60, 65 or above, and you have equity in your home, this could be interesting for you. Now, there's cases where people have owned homes for so long, 40 years, 50 years, and now they have $2 million home that's paid off, but you struggle to pay the property taxes. You struggle in your retirement. This is an ironic situation because you're in a classic situation, house rich and cash poor, right? This is where a reverse mortgage could be interesting. What it is you get access to the equity in your home, but you don't need to qualify through traditional means. Traditional means would be like, hey, show me your T4s, show me your NOAs, your traditional sources of income. But retirees don't have traditional sources of income or income that's high enough to qualify for any sort of financing, whether it's an actual mortgage or a home equity line of credit. It can be difficult to access. That's number one. And number two is you've got these, 65, 70, 75, 80-year-olds who are like, mortgage? What the hell? I paid that thing off 40 years ago. I'm not taking up more debt. Are you crazy? But I wanted to demonstrate to you where this might be useful. And so imagine you are 65 and above, and you have a home in Toronto, maybe in the Annex, or maybe in Willowdale or wherever, and $2 million home paid off a long time ago, maybe. You have access, you have equity in your home, and you want to access that equity. You would only be able to access maybe a tiny bit with your pension or your old age security or whatever, right? In terms of the qualification. How do you get access to a bigger chunk of it? So generally speaking, what happens with reverse mortgage is the qualification criteria is just that, number one, you have access to equity in your primary residence, and number two, you are of a certain age. And it's a tiered thing. Again, I'm not the mortgage broker, so I'll leave that to someone else who can give you all the exact details. But generally speaking, if you're 55, you access, this amount of equity. If you're 60, you access this amount of equity. If you're 65, I think it's like 50% or 55% loan to value of the property. So imagine you had a $2 million property. And imagine now you're like 65 and above, and now you can access up to 50%, let's just say, of the value of the property. You can get access to $1 million equity takeout.
I was gonna say, sounds good. What's the catch, right? Are rates significantly higher? Or what does payback look like for these things?
The catch is, and the reason most people shun them, is because interest rates are higher. Generally speaking, we've seen interest rates at about 2% higher than normal rates, right? So when rates were 6.5, reverse mortgages were 8.5. In today's rates, we're about 4.5. We're seeing reverse mortgages around 6.5, right? So there is a significant premium on the interest rate, and that's why for people who really look at things very myopically, just like what's there in front of them, they're like, oh wait, I'm not doing that. The bank gets all the money then. Like that's how does this make sense for me? How is this a win for me? But thinking in those terms is a little too myopic, and the reason is because I haven't got to the actual benefit of it yet. The true benefit of this is that there is no debt servicing. There is no monthly mortgage payment, which in some people's minds, they're like, well, how does this make any sense then? Interest is just going to accrue. Yes, actually, well, the interest will accrue. That's true. Interest will accrue on a monthly basis until the passing of the final spouse in terms of the ownership of the property. And so the thing that freaks most people out is they always ask, oh, is there going to be any equity in the property then to leave to my kids or anything like that? And if you work out the math, the answer is yes. There's still a significant amount of equity in the property. And I can tell you this because just last week, I had a client who booked me for 4 hours of advisory, 2 hours beforehand to sort of like understand what this whole thing was, and then 2 hours with his family and his parents to have me explain it to his parents. And so I worked out all the numbers and I worked out all the graphs to show the parents. And yes, there's a significant amount of equity that's still left in the property over the long term. So, yeah, did you have any?
You want to maybe dive into that example? Because I think, now that we have a bit of an understanding of what reverse mortgages are, kind of a bit of the pros and cons, paying a little bit more, but on a cash flow basis, cash flow management can be, absolutely a great option. How can we start applying some of these things? Like, why would you even consider it?
Yeah, for sure. So can you imagine this hypothetical situation that I just described to you? $2 million property, you access $1 million through an equity takeout through reverse mortgage at today's rate 6.5%, let's just say, and you don't pay the monthly mortgage. So this is $1 million you just have sitting in your bank account. You didn't pay. It's a refinance. You didn't pay tax on it no income tax or anything like that. So what happens? You have $1 million in your bank account. Very, very simple example. You could put that into a 10% structured note and get a $100,000 income stream in perpetuity or until passing, right? So, I mean, that's a very, very simple example in order to demonstrate how you can use the equity of your property to provide you with a very comfortable retirement. The slightly more nuanced example is, can you imagine that baby boomer has an adult child, probably in their 30s or 40s. That adult child, if in today's environment, we keep on talking about how is someone in their 30s or whatever gonna ever own a property? How real estate is priced out of the range for these young people. I guess that would be middle-aged now, but the young people, let's just say, to ever afford a property. Here's a hypothetical situation in which parent and child can work together in a capacity to get to better outcomes. Let's say that the younger person, the younger adult child who's 35, 40, let's just say that they have a pretty good job. Imagine household income is like $100,000, $150,000. Let's just say they can qualify very simply for a $500,000 mortgage only, right? $100,000 income translates to about a $500,000 mortgage that you can qualify for. And we know that a triplex in Toronto, for example, is about 1.5 million, right? That's kind of our most basic asset. It's funny to call a $1.5 million property basic, but that's our most kind of basic triplex.
Toronto basic.
Yeah, exactly. And we also know that generates about $8,000 in rent, give or take, right? And we also know that generally speaking, these properties, when purchased with an 80% loan-to-value mortgage, are generally about cash flow neutral to cash flow positive, maybe around $500. We do find them occasionally for a bit more, right? I think found one for a client that was 1,000. But anyway, these are
Yeah.
not promising
sometimes
anything. Yeah.
Yes.
But now imagine the scenario. So you have a $1.5 million property. You have a $1 million takeout that the parents were able to take out of their property. Imagine that they give those funds to the adult child, the millennial, and now the millennial who qualifies for a $500,000 mortgage only is able to purchase a $1.5 million triplex. And there's lots of different scenarios that you could play out here. They could live in one unit and rent out the others. They can rent out all three, or there's lots of different things you can do. But generally speaking, can you imagine that this is just a pure income property? Let's just say, right? We know that it generates $8,000 in rent. Normally, if you got it at a normal mortgage, 80% loan to value, and cash flow neutral, cash flow positive, $500. Now let's look at this alternative scenario where you have $1 million down payment and a $500,000 mortgage. That $500,000 mortgage, every multiple of $100,000 of a mortgage is about $500. So you have a mortgage payment of about $2,500. And let's just say, roughly speaking, it's like $1,200 in expenses. Let's just round that to 1,000. Or round it up. We'll round it up to just so no one can call me out for being too aggressive here. So conservatively, we're rounded up to $1,500. So you're at $4,000 of carry costs, $1,500 expenses, $2,500 mortgage, against $8,000 of rent. You now have a cash flow positive asset of $4,000 a month. Now that $4,000 could be turned around and you could give it back to the adult. The parent. It could be at $4,000 turns into almost a $50,000 income for them to help them in their retirement. It's like a pension. You could split it between the adult child and the baby boomer parent. It could just be the child's. There's lots you could do here. It's all part of the negotiation between the adult child and the baby boomer. But now this millennial who had no way of accessing, no way of actually getting a good asset in Toronto, maybe they thought, oh, $500,000 mortgage is all I can qualify for. That's only going to get me a condo. This is an alternative. This is how we can get to better outcomes by looking at these problems a little bit differently and applying these different tools in different ways that are fairly unconventional.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway here is if you're simply using a reverse mortgage to draw equity and then to spend it for fun, that's a loss. But if you're able to take the funds that you're basically getting from your reverse mortgage and put it into some sort of asset which is outperforming the cost of that loan, then you are better off, right? So, an investment property certainly exceeds a 6% return. And there's many iterations of this. You don't have to go buy another investment property. You could take that money out, build a laneway suite in your backyard. Or I know one example where a family did a reverse mortgage on their property, built a triplex in the front, built a laneway suite in the back, lives in the laneway suite now, and fourplex in the front. They're generating $8,000 to $10,000 in rents from the fourplex in the front while living in a beautiful laneway suite in the back. So it can be life altering if done properly.
There's a lot of different scenarios that this can apply to. So even that actual property itself. So if you don't even think about their child and an adult millennial or anything like that, when you just think about the boomer, if that baby boomer was looking for another income stream, maybe like a situation that arises all the time is I have too much house, right? I have too much house. It's just me. I'm an empty nester. Kids are moved out. And I'd love to continue living in aging in place. I'm very I've got insights into this because my wife is in aging research, so I hear about this all the time. And if you feel like you want to age in place because that can get you to better health outcomes and better, you're still surrounded by the same community. You're very very familiar. Your friends are nearby. You know where to go to find the newspaper, local coffee shop, and you want to age in place. One thing we've seen done is a renovation of that same subject property upon which the reverse mortgage was taken out. And you can turn that, for example, into 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, maybe that laneway suite as well. So what Ming was talking about, instead of going to build something else, and that's actually going to buy and build a different property, you could renovate the same property. I don't know if that's what you were actually saying. Was that what you were saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely.
You were saying that. Okay, we were saying the same thing. And so you would renovate it.
I was going to say, like, I think
unit.
that's where our mindset is, right? Like, you can take the money out of this, and if the mindset is simply applying this to expense to fund lifestyle, this is where I think very justifiably reverse mortgages have got bad reputations, right? Because to be quite honest, a lot of people with a couple $100,000 sitting in their bank account may not be very responsible with it. But if you're not that person and you're taking the money and putting it into improving an existing building to generate income, investing it wisely, then this actually becomes a very powerful tool for investment.
Yeah, and we've seen lots of instances of this where, just continuing along on that example, taking that old family home, turning it into multiple units, it can serve purposes for, supplementary rental income. It could be for intergenerational living, right? For those boomerang children that keep on coming home, right? And so there's all these different cases. So that's why, like, if you're going to go out and spend it on a yacht, probably not a good idea, right? But if you want to create an income stream for yourself using reverse mortgage, and we know, like, it's like if you can get a 10%, 11%, 12% structured note, we know that that's going to outperform, and that's going to provide an income stream. And if you're going to use that to go buy, buy another property, if that's, for example, another investment property, we know that now you have multiple assets, multiple appreciating assets. You have the family home that's continuing to still appreciate, and generally speaking, it's going to maintain a solid amount of equity even at the end, at the time of passing. And if you invested in a triplex, that's also an appreciating asset. So it's a great way to build wealth, a great way to actually create an income stream for yourself using what is traditionally unutilized equity, equity that's not being put to any good use, actually. So.
Yeah. I mean, thanks very much. That was super helpful, and hopefully this gives folks a bit of an insight into the way we approach problems at Volition. We like to take a more strategic approach when it comes to, not just straight investing, but, if you're thinking about buying, selling, this is the kind of, mental approach we bring to all sorts of real estate problem solving. So thanks again, Matt, for your time today. Hopefully, folks, you found that interesting. Follow us on all our social medias. We'll try to keep dropping content like this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Ming. I appreciate it.